Welcome to Under the Rug at Work, where I shine light on things that are normally swept under the rug. Today, I'm chatting with Leanne Hart about awareness and choice. Leanne is a facilitator, guide, and the founder of Heart to Heart Wellbeing, where she helps leaders get on top of the things that cause stress at work so they can feel better and do better. Thank you so much for joining me, Leanne.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And this is a really interesting topic because we see it all the time where two people respond to the same event or activity or action that happens, especially in the workplace, completely differently. What's your take on why this happens?
There's so much going on in anything that happens. And so a few different things. There's the good day, bad day effect where even you yourself might have a different reaction when you're having a good day versus when you're having a bad day. That can be depending on how much sleep you've had. If you've slept really well, things can often brush over us more easily than if we've had only a few hours sleep. Might be determined by how well hydrated you are, or what sort of social interaction you've had with your family or your friends or your neighbours before you've left for work that day. So there's so many variables that go into that experience outside of the event itself. It can be whether we have different values from one person to another. So our values dictate a lot of the way that we respond to things, and our values lead our behaviours in a lot of ways. They're the things that are important to us. So if we have two different people with really different values or ways of looking at a situation or the world, that can often lead to different reactions as well. But in that millisecond, that really, really short period of time where our nervous system is deciding what happens next, it's drawing on all sorts of things like your lived experience, what somebody's day might have been like leading up to that moment, not just in the moment itself. It could be that it's drawing on information from the past. So, oh, this thing has happened to me before, therefore I have reason to be happy or scared or fearful or challenged. So we don't know what that looks like from one person to the next, but it all plays into the mix of why you and me might react really differently to exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and you're so right. The whole lack of sleep and dehydrated. And I know that when I'm not feeling well or haven't eaten well for a period of time, that I'm not myself. And you often hear people say, have you got out of the wrong side of the bed this morning? Which often is interpreted as you're normally not this cranky. To have that awareness of that we may have something else going on and that we're reacting or behaving in a way that's not typical is really good to know and also understand that. So something that I've introduced that has really helped over the last few years, especially since burnout, was making sure I had a, a a bedtime that's the same basically. So I find going to bed by a particular time, which is around 9:30, means that I get up earlier and I feel better and I feel really refreshed. So that was a huge change for me. But how do we become more aware of our reactions, our responses, our behaviors?
I think a really interesting one, and it takes a bit of courage and vulnerability, but it can be to ask people that know us well
Mm.
and that see us in a range of different situations. So people that are close to you, a little bit like a movie, they might see all of you from the good, the bad, and the ugly. Somebody at work might only see you for half an hour or an hour that day. And so they're getting a very different impression of you based on the amount of time that they're spending with you. So seeing yourself through the eyes of others can also be a really interesting way to build some of that awareness.
Mm.
But it does take courage to ask other people, what do you notice about how I respond when I'm stressed? Or, you've seen me when I'm firing on all cylinders and I'm feeling really good. How do I usually act in these situations? Because different people will be able to give you different information. that you may or may not be aware of yourself. One of my teachers, Mark Walsh, he often asks, what are you like when nobody is watching? So it's what's your true self like when you're sitting in a cafe and you're pondering something? What awareness do you have around how you look, or the energy that you put out, or the how much you look like you're going to engage with other people versus bite their head off if they come over to serve you a coffee. So sometimes that self-awareness we don't have ourselves, but other people will have, based on the interaction they have with us or the situation that we're in at the time. So asking others is a really interesting one. But just the more aware you are that different situations will bring up different reactions in you, the more you can do something about it. So when you have that awareness, you then have the choice. And if you know that, okay, I'm going to work today, I've had a bit of a rough morning, I had a lot going on at home before I left for work, I'm hungry, didn't actually sleep that well, I've got quite a stressful meeting that's about to happen, knowing that you're probably not going to be showing up as your best self right in that moment, and that if you're aware of that, you can then be conscious of the way that you respond. If your temper's a little bit short, or somebody asks you to do something that on a good day you'd go, sure, that seems reasonable. But on a day after the morning that you've just had might just be, why are they asking me to do that now? So that there's some of it's our physiological reaction to situations, where might come through in our muscles, our tight shoulders, our tension around the jaw or the face, and other things might be our emotional reaction to it as well. But the more conscious you are that different situations will bring out different things in me, then the more choice you have to change or adjust or continue that.
Yeah, they're really great points. And I feel like too, perfectionism has a lot to play in this space. We we often feel that others should be perfect in their responses and behaviors, and that we do the things that we do because we're pretty perfect too. So if we can look at and give ourselves and others a break to say no one's perfect, and maybe do some self-reflection to say, okay, if I'm not perfect, how could I do things better? What did I do today that maybe I could do differently in the future or last week? Or just kind of reflecting back on that to say, all right, I'm human. I am not perfect, and how can I grow? How can I improve? And what I'd love to ask you next is, how can we be better at responding rather than reacting? Because I feel like that gets us in trouble sometimes, and then our maybe not so much perfectionist view, but we have this ability to justify our actions and behaviors. Whereas if we can look at responding rather than reacting, we will have better relationships and be able to not be so reactive. So can you give us some thoughts and ideas on that one?
Yeah. And I always forget who to attribute it to, but it's that pause in between reacting and responding that's really important. So if somebody says something to you, or does an action that makes you feel uncomfortable or angry or upset or happy, or whatever the sensation and feeling is that you get, it's just stopping for a moment, letting your nervous system do what it does, to go, I'm really feeling that I want to say something here that I might regret. Evaluating the situation and going, is it appropriate for me to respond that way right now? Or is there a different response that might be better in the situation? And our nervous system will make some of those decisions for us, again, based on what we've experienced in the past. Or our nervous system is really interesting in the way that it helps us respond. It draws on information from the past that's happened. It throws itself ahead to the future, but it's not very good at just working with what's there in the present. And there may be no threat, there may be no reason to react the way that you have before. But the nervous system doesn't know that. It's either drawing on information that it can use, or it's predicting what it thinks might happen based on its its experience. You know, if
Mm,
this happens, then this is likely to happen. Therefore, I react like this.
mm.
Taking that pause gives it a chance to come back into the present a little bit more. And I find that's often the time where just taking a couple of breaths before you respond. And somebody very wise once said to me, you don't have to fill the silence. So if
Yes.
there's a gap in a conversation, or you need to take a moment to just ground yourself through a few breaths, or just noticing your feet on the ground, bringing a bit of sensation into your toes, getting your mind out of that fight or flight response, doing that is a way that just gives you that, that couple of seconds to go, I've got a choice how I respond right now. And that
Mm,
might be from a place of heartfelt kindness. It might be from a place of protection. It might be from a place of projection. But we have a choice when it comes to that. That's a very
yes.
long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, it's great. And it's great advice as well. And how can we make better choices when it comes to the way we respond to things that we might not like? You have kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd love if we could delve into it a little bit more.
Yeah, well, some of that history that we all carry with us, and we carry everything in our body, whether we like it or realize it. Um, we each have body patterns, and those body patterns can show up in different ways. And that could be around setting boundaries, saying yes or no. It could be around our relationship with vulnerability, or giving and receiving. That's a really important one for women entrepreneurs, around relationship with money and things as well, giving and receiving money, giving and receiving help or support. It could be looking at the way that we take up space, or the way that we are able to deal with self-care and managing ourselves. So our bodies store patterns around that. And one of the things that I do is work with people around those body patterns, so that once they're aware that their body naturally goes into that formation, or that holds on to that tension when they're in a situation, then they can do something to understand why am I reacting this way every time this happens? Why is it only this sort of personality that I react to? Why is it only that sort of personality in this situation that pushes my buttons? If it was two people in exactly the same situation, that person says it, that's totally fine. If this person says it, all hell breaks loose. So why is that?
Yeah, I think people would be really interested to know more about that. If they are, what's the best way that they can reach out to you and connect with you?
Yeah, so they can either contact me via my LinkedIn profile, or my website, which is Heart to Heart Wellbeing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Leanne. I always love chatting to you, and yeah, really appreciate your advice and insights today.
My pleasure. It's been lots of fun. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.